The following program was made possible thanks to the generous support of our Kickstarter backers.
First Holmes was born, then he got fat, bored, and tired. Sup, Holmes?
Beware, your host, Jonathan Holmes.
Thank you so much, Sinistar, and thank you, Teddy. Thank you, Teddy Lee. Here you are. This is so exciting.
Hey, nice to be here.
You're excited, I can tell.
Yeah, super excited.
We scheduled you kind of at the last minute. MetaNet software was going to be on, but they're not quite ready to talk about what they're doing. So I asked you, and you said yes, as long as the Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't come out on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I watched it on Friday.
How was it? How did
it was
you?
Good. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I had really high expectations, so
Oh, yeah?
fully reach it, but I think that was my fault more than the movies.
Sure. I saw it last night. I shot my expectations down real low, and it totally worked. I'm pretty sure, my standing theory for all human beings, which always is going to get you in trouble, but I'm pretty sure that hype will kill you worse than spoilers when it comes to...
I had low hype because the first trailer didn't do it for me, but then all the reviews started coming out, and I couldn't help it. I just kept going up and up and up, and it just ruined it. I knew it'd happen.
Did you like the Avengers a lot?
Yeah, no, I like the Avengers a lot. But for this year, I think the Wolverine, not the Wolverine movie, the Marvel movie, the X-Men movie. I forget what it's called.
Days of Future Past.
Yeah, that one is the best so far for this year.
Yeah, it was basically just X-Men Terminator crossover in my mind, which worked great. Yeah,
more or less perfect. Yeah, perfect genres.
I thought it was kind of weird that Joss Whedon, famous for making Serenity and Firefly, basically cowboy movie in space, he's on the Avengers, whereas the Cowboys in Space Marvel movie gets made by the Dawn of the Dead guy. And he stuck Lloyd Kaufman in there. I don't know if you're a big James Gunn fan, but he stuck the creator of Toxic Avenger in the movie for 1 second. I freaked out.
Oh, yeah, I only knew that James Gunn made Super, so I didn't really follow much of his stuff.
Yeah.
But it's good, yeah.
Huh! Now we small talk, so that was fun. People who don't know, you created Don't Shit Your Pants.
Yeah, that was the first game that me and my brother made. It's kind of the one that we're known for.
Not roguelike.
Not nearly as well.
And you're a part of Cellar Door Games. Is that more or less the core of Cellar Door Games? Who is in that? Yeah,
Cellar Door Games is really just me and my brother. Everybody else who's on it, we've contracted and so forth.
Sure.
But it's just really us two.
And what's your brother's name?
Kenny.
Kenny.
So, yeah. He does 90% of the work. I only do a very small portion because he does all the business, the production, the programming, and he even did all the art for our early games. So yeah, he's a huge portion. It's more like Cellar Door Games Kenny, and I help out on the side. That's kind of how it comes out too.
Well, I don't know about that. I think the design of a game is pretty darn important, and your name and the credits of Rogue Legacy as you start up. What a nicely put together opening credit sequence, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like to go back to it just for the feel I get. And I always wonder, should I spoil it? I don't want to spoil it. People hate spoilers, even though they're not as important as you think. I don't want to make you feel like I don't care about you. People.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Thanks.
Anytime. Rogue Legacy starts, and the opening sequence, you can do a thing. And I always think, maybe there's a way I cannot. I don't want to do it. The thing. You do at the end.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think it's a spoiler, because it's only 1 minute into the game.
Ooh, no.
No?
People have gotten mad at me for spoiling that Solid Snake smokes something. I better not say what it is. Yeah. How dare you? You ruined my life because the experience would have been natural. Now it's unnatural, like a demon.
Yeah. I guess I can agree.
Yeah. And why take chances? Maybe spoilers don't matter, but I don't want to risk other people feeling bad, so forget it. Not going to risk it. But anyway, is there any way to not do the thing that I'm talking about?
No, you have to do the thing.
I can't do something else?
You can pause the game and then skip it, but that's it. There's no way to actually avoid it.
It sends a message right away to me that this is a game about taking weird risks and actions, and you might not even know what's going to happen because of them, but it's all about diving into the unknown, taking those risks in life. A little bit of the same feel I got from spoilers Metal Gear Solid 3 when you do spoilers to spoilers towards the end of the game. You know, spoilers?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
She's like my favorite character in the game, spoilers. And
Yeah, I know.
spoilers to her at the end, and you're like,
yeah, I just needed a gender. I guess so.
But you have to do it, and this is a game where you're constantly having to take that risk and have the gameplay be a part of a story which is about a bunch of people in a family. How did you come up, or how did you and your brother come up with the idea for Rogue Legacy really being a game about a family lineage?
So the lineage thing came about because first came off because we were very mechanical. There's a lot of indie teams who are like way story driven, or they might be art driven, but we're just the mechanics. And the whole point was we wanted to upfront change, because you know in roguelikes like Splunky or whatever, your character evolves over time during your playthrough. But we knew we wanted like a small, less than 5 minute life. And if you have less than 5 minutes, then we need to speed everything up. So character evolution had to be done at like the 0 second mark. So we're like, okay, we'll do traits. And then when traits came about, or at least the concept that it had to be at the very beginning, we came up with the trait system. And then from the trait system, we came up with the story. So it all kind of slowly evolved from the mechanics first.
Huh. And if I'm hearing you right, one of the first things you knew you wanted was people to die pretty regularly, but have death not just be punishment, but have it be now you get to evolve after you die. Is that one of the first things you thought of for the game? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that was one of the first things, because we wanted to add permanency to the game, and so a lot of the games we make, we kind of use anti-inspirations, or like we'll play a genre and we'll go, we don't like this about the genre, so let's try and fix it. So in this case, it was the fact that, well, at least the way I play and a whole lot of people in my family play, is they don't level their characters up, because they're afraid of making some type of critical mistake. So we're like, okay, so how would we make it so that we would level up like how most humans would? And so that came about with the system where we take away all the money and stuff unless you spent it, to kind of force people to use everything at their, in their hands. But yeah.
So it's not that you're against leveling up, it's that you notice that there's this trepidation, this overthinking about leveling up amongst people in your family. I want to hear more about that, not to segue too quickly, but how many people in your family play video games that involve leveling up?
Well, I mean, my entire family plays games, right? Like, we were pretty poor when we were kids, so, video games is just a really cheap source of entertainment compared to movies and whatnot. So we all just started playing games, and we all grew up around it because of that. And so eventually the way things turned out, like we all had this similar play styles. I don't know if my sister affected everybody else or whatnot, but it's just these things. And it's like, if we can make a game which we like to play, or that fixes all the issues that we have in playing games, then I'm sure it's going to affect other people, right? We're not this isolated case.
It takes some boldness, though, to hope that you're not an isolated case, which goes along with the boldness of Rogue Legacy in general. Such a boldness game, always having to be like, maybe I'll die, and if I do, it's okay. And the fact that, I'm getting a little stressed out just thinking about it. But the fact that you had confidence that, yes, I love video games, and therefore the way I think about video games and what I want video games to be is going to be something that others will share. Personally, that was my sense from Rogue Legacy right away, is like I felt like this is a person or people who really know video games and think about them a lot in order to make a game like this. It was really felt like a video game made for people who love video game mechanics. And I'm guessing, personally, that's why it's blown up the way that it has. At least it seems to be. People heard you were going to be on the show this week, and they're like, how'd you get him to be on?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, we've had Jonathan Blow on, and Edmund McMillan, and we got the guys from Rogue Legacy. They're like, Rogue Legacy? No way. Aren't they in mansion somewhere? Just like, kicking their feet up. Yeah. But to the people who like your game, it doesn't seem to be a like or dislike. It's a love or haven't played it yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely turned off some people, especially because for the people who go into it expecting a game like Splunky, where it's like, oh, you start from the very beginning, a lot of people get turned off by the leveling mechanic because they think we're kind of like diluting the roguelike experience. But yeah, I mean, I can see where they're coming from, but at the same time, like the whole point of this game was that we could make a roguelike which was accessible. Right? So I can see why a lot of, especially the more hardcore people, would get kind of upset by that. But I think we're okay with it.
I'm totally puzzled. That's very good of you to be so understanding. I am puzzled. They don't like that it's not hard enough, or that you don't die and then have to like get no progress for your death. They want
yeah, because they want to be like, oh, well, it's only me who's getting better, not like the game is making it slightly easier. Which,
could they just start over every time, just delete their save if they wanted?
Honestly, beating it at level 1, like I know one guy did it who beat it at level 1, but it took him like 30 minutes to beat the final boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do expect people to scale, but the whole, like, one of the big reasons for that, aside from adding permanency, was to make sure leveling acted as a kind of an accommodator, right? Like, if you're not good enough, you can grind a bit to get better.
Sure.
Because something I think that has disappeared from RPGs, like a whole lot of RPGs put these, like, level caps. It's like, oh, you can't level past 10 until you beat the first boss, and then all of a sudden it jumps up to 20. And then you're like, well, then what's the whole point of the RPG system, right? That was the whole point of it, is to accommodate people dynamically, depending on their skill level. And then, you know, as you get more and more play testers and whatnot, everybody's trying to balance out that curve, and you're kind of losing the whole appeal of RPG games. So,
And what do you think's driving that push to try to put caps on things, to try to make it a uniform experience, not one that's personalized to the way you play? What do you think their motivation is in there?
I'm pretty sure it's metrics, because like especially once you get into the AAA, metrics is driving everything, right? So it's like I think a good example, and I'm not saying it's a bad game, it's a really good game, but like Diablo 3, right? They really hamstring you in how your character levels. But at the same time, it's like the difficulty is nice, and it's a very clean difficulty curve. I'm pretty sure anybody who plays that game will beat it eventually, right? But just because they spent so many hours just trying to make sure it's perfect for the prototypical player. And it kind of, I don't know, I got kind of bored of it because of that. Like I couldn't make it harder or easier just because you always leveled up when you're supposed to when you beat a boss and so forth.
It's kind of a different form of hand-holding in a way, not so much quest hand-holding, not so much like over-tutorializing, but just making sure that your experience is led in a direction where you're not going to feel bad too much ever, I guess? Yeah,
more or less. Like our game had 2 play testers, and it was at the very end of development. We just got 2 people to play the game, and then we made as many tweaks from that as we could. But like that was literally a week before launch. So we're like the opposite. I don't know if that's a good idea, but that's the way we do things.
Well, it's very interesting to me because your goal was the same. Like Diablo 3's goal, it sounds like, was like make a game where you're going to go out and conquer the unknown, but not make it so you feel like you just totally screwed up because you leveled in the wrong way or blah, blah, blah. You have the same goal, too, to make leveling kind and not so intimidating, and also the whole experience of delving into this world not too intimidating, yet very, very different ways of going about that. Whereas Diablo feels hand-holdy, Diablo 3 does. Rogue Legacy, I always felt like maybe I'm gonna screw up, but it's okay if I do. It's like knowing that it's still up to me what I'm gonna do, but that the punishment is never gonna be all bad. It's always going to be interesting and bad. Like I picked the dwarfism. I'm like, maybe this will be terrible, but who knows? Maybe it'll be awesome.
Yeah, as long as it's not too punishing, right? Oh, you lose like 3 minutes of your life.
Yeah.
I think let's try something out.
And you said early on in the design you decided there was going to be, I think you said 5-minute lives?
Yeah, that was the goal. So like when I was playing the game, I averaged 15 or so. So I was like, okay, so this is a good period for other players. Like that's kind of the general rule, right? So you play the game, and then you just subtract X% for what you think the average consumer will be. It ended up being like the average player playing for like a minute, so I overshot that, but that's still good. You know what I mean?
And why did you want 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 1 minute? Why did you want people to die fairly regularly?
So there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them, we wanted this game to be pick up and play. Not even, I wouldn't say pick up and play. We wanted the game to be fast because, like, I have very little patience just for everything in general. I have a lot of hard time picking up games. So, like, right off the bat, when you play the game, like when the logo and everything's popping up, that's actually masking loading, right? So the logo will stay as long as loading takes. And we do a whole lot of those kind of small things so that when people want to play the game, they don't think about these things. They don't think about, oh, I have to wait through the title screen and all that stuff. But yeah, the big reasons is because we wanted people who had only like 10 minutes. It's like, oh, I'm going to go have dinner, right? So I have 10 minutes. What can I play? And they'll just pick up Rogue Legacy. Just because I think that the time allotment people have nowadays is getting smaller and smaller. And so it's like, well, whatever. If we want faster games, then why don't we just make a game that accommodates people? Instead of making a game, you have to accommodate for the game. So
Sure.
that was like one of the main reasons.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. As I've moved forward in life and the people I've met, I've noticed that people think they have less time. People have much more that they feel like they're capable of doing, what with the internet and all. People are like, oh, I can write a blog, I can meet a girlfriend, I can do my taxes. You can just do anything all the time. So it's always, I have all the options to do anything. What am I going to use my time for? And then playing a video game, they feel like, well, I shouldn't do that. I'll feel guilty if I do that. Then if you say to them, but she'll just play for 5 minutes, honest.
Yeah.
Just 5 minutes, don't worry. And then 5 hours later, they're like, oh, just one more. You know, it's got that. I know very few people that play Rogue Legacy for 10 minutes at a time. Everyone I've talked to is like, I bought. People really love your game. They're like, I got it on Steam, and now I'm getting it on Vita, so I can play it on the go. I want to play it again and again. I want to play it pretty much every chance I get, because it gives people this feeling that there's maybe just a little bit more content they can squeeze out of it. You really give people a feeling that anything might be possible in the game. They haven't seen it all yet. Was that something else that you decided early on that you wanted to provide for the player?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely did want to kind of get into the whole procedural generation stuff and take full advantage of that. At the same time, we're not as crazy as some of the other games, right? Just because we really wanted to emphasize player skill over chance, right? So that does and eventually remove a lot of the mystery. And we also like a lot of the expectations of a roguelike is to not explain what an item does, right? So you're like, oh, what does this item do? I'm going to use it. And it's like a blue potion and it kills you or something like that. I have terrible memory. I forget everything, so we just upfronted it. It's like, this potion will do this, so kind of like everybody knows what it does. So it removes some of the mystery, but at the same time I think it's worth it, because I don't think a lot of people want to bother keeping like an internal notebook in their head just for this game, right?
Sure,
So
they can do that with another game if they want to. It is a rarity in that, other than Spelunky, I don't know. I don't think Risk of Rain quite counts. To me, Spelunky and Rogue Legacy are, in many ways, two sides of the same coin, but with very different priorities. Like, Rogue Legacy, to me, is about watching something evolve and unfold regardless of how well I do. I always get to see some sort of evolution, where Spelunky just makes me feel bad about myself, like 9 times out of 10. But I still am so curious about what's going to happen next that I go back in. So Spelunky is like a death-defying horror show that I can't say no to, and Rogue Legacy is like watching the saga unfold. I weirdly put a lot into watching the family lineage transpire in front of me through the portraits. I could get a little mushy about it. Like, oh, you gave birth to a dwarf? That's so awesome. And then who is giving birth to whom? I don't know if I missed something. But where are these babies coming from?
It's a mystery. We'll explain that in the sequel. But no. It's just your children. I don't know. We just did that for fun. Like, everything we did in the game, the first thing was always just make sure it's fun, right? So I think a big reason why people like it is just because we put that kind of emphasis first.
Right.
You know?
Sure. Yeah, just looking at the character and you know you're in for something that cares about fun. Just walking with chest out, sword thrust out constantly.
That's all our artist. That was Glauber. He did all of that. Like, the style is 100% him. We didn't really put any mandates on that.
And is he also working on Chasm? Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's working on like Chasms. He's working on I forget the name of the game, but it's this kickstarted turn-based RTS, or not RTS. It's like turn-based board game battle, I guess.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. He's working on a lot of projects now. He still wants to work with us, but we haven't started the next project yet, so we're just it's all on hold. But
Sure. Yeah.
Hopefully we can start soon.
Yeah, I hope so. It seems like a very fruitful combination, and I think people are going to associate his style, not to diminish the don't shit your pants style.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we'll hopefully make a sequel soon on that game, too.
What more can be said about don't shitting your pants? It seems as though the story, I felt the same way about Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, the story was told. Guardians of the Galaxy, don't shit your pants. They're both like these complete units. How can you add them?
Complete experiences. Yeah, I don't know. We've been thinking about it. We're actually going to make a sequel for it during a toe jam or a game jam. But then we just went in a completely different direction once we got there. So
what'd you make?
We made this zombie shooter. Not a zombie shooter. It ended up being you shooting each other while zombies attacked you. It was just like a super short multiplayer game, which I actually really liked. Like, we made it in 3 days, and it was a lot of fun. And the game that came out of it was actually like pretty cool. So,
what's it called?
Oh, well, we called it The Last of Me, which we're not allowed to use. Like, we were just using that as a stupid joke, but I think we might try and expand on it in the future, just because. Yeah.
Is this publicly known? Did you like show it off and stuff?
No, we showed it at the game jam, but that's like only a few hundred people or a few dozen people saw it, so it's still very unknown.
Holmes exclusive, not The Last of Me.
No, it might not go anywhere, right? But it's still fun.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly good on making us, reinvigorating us. But then the ports came back and we had to work on that. Porting is brutal.
Sure. Yeah. How long have you been working on Rogue Legacy total?
You mean including like porting and everything?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say because like the first year and a half was really tough. Like that was when all the work was done, and then the next year was a lot of going to shows and advertising the game. But even then, like the work hours we were pulling weren't nearly the same, right? Mm-hmm. But I'd say because we're still working on it, I'd say I guess development has kind of been 2.5 years. But really, the last year has just been like advertising and doing port work and stuff like that, it's not as much just manual labor, but the mental labor is pretty exhausting. Just because we're going into stuff we don't like business and hiring and stuff like that, and it's not what we want to do.
Yeah. It's amazing. I also think that when you have to do a task in the total timeline of the task makes a big difference. Like if I start off something difficult first thing in the day, if I have to do it at the end of the day when I'm like worn out and tired and already been like beating my head against so many walls, it's rough. And you're kind of at the end of the life cycle of the development of Rogue Legacy. At least I think so. Are you feeling that way? Like you're in the home stretch?
Hopefully. I don't know. Stuff like before we could say, oh yeah, this is what we're gonna do, and we have nothing else to worry about. That hasn't been the case after we released this game. It's like all these things keep popping up, things we're not expecting, and it's pretty exhausting.
Yeah, I bet. Hopefully you're getting rich, like people assumed. They thought, he's going to be sitting on a golden throne somewhere to having people do his bidding. He'll never be on Sup Holmes, and here you are.
Well, I mean, we did well. I mean, we're really, really grateful for everybody who like supported us and everything. But I wouldn't say you're rich because we have to. Well, first off, we haven't actually even paid ourselves yet. Like it's been a year, and we're still running off savings. And like my brother has had to take loans out of the company, but it's just because when we made this game, we didn't have like anything. We didn't have any type of business set up. And right off the bat, like doing the taxes was so brutal that we had to, outsource our accounting to to different companies and everything, and then because we're so slow on everything, it's all building up. It's all building up, and it has resulted in a $0 paycheck for either of us.
Son of a bitch.
I know.
Wow.
If you asked me what I was expecting, I would have never said that, but that's the way it is.
Right, despite the fact that sales, I'm hoping, have been pretty good if I just go by the talk on the internet. A lot of people have heard of your game, a lot of people have a lot of respect for it. Now it's on PS3, PS4, and PS Vita. Hopefully, that was just last week, so I don't know. I don't know if you can tell me how long it takes to see how well a game sold once it hits all of these major consoles.
Oh, Steam is fast. Steam is like instant.
Yeah.
Sony's pretty quick. It seems to update once a day, or at least only for one region. We don't get to see the other regions. It's doing okay. It wasn't doing as great as we were hoping, but I think we'll be able to break even.
Sure.
Right, which is good. Like we're totally happy with breaking even, right? As long as we don't like lose a bunch of money on the porting.
Huh. It's the kind of game, though, break even. I am not satisfied with that. That's very kind of you to say, oh, that'll be okay. That doesn't add up to me.
Well, I mean, the port was like pretty expensive, right? Like, because we couldn't do it ourselves, we had to outsource it. And when we outsourced it, because we wrote it in like C#, that's not a language that can be used, so it had to kind of be built from the scratch. And then we made it for all 3 consoles, so that really raised the price.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, one problem was the fact that we're launching against Last of Us, right? That was huge. It's always Last of Us, and then maybe it'll say and Rogue Legacy, but a whole lot of things just like, oh, Last of Us has come out today and everything like that. But we're okay. I mean, we haven't included European sales. I mean, I think pretty sure we'll do okay, right?
Yeah.
Just, I think Sony was expecting more, which makes us sad too.
Ah,
right? Sony's like, oh. I'm not blaming them. We'll see. I don't know. Who knows? It's only been like
a week?
5 days. Yeah, it hasn't even been a week. Yeah.
Sure.
So we'll see. We don't even know what the weekend sales are, and that might change everything.
Right, and the Holmes sales. Everyone who's watching this, it's your job. Buy it. And hopefully, you gave me a code. I used the PS3 code myself. I gave the PS4 code to a guy who just got married. And he's like, all I want is Rogue Legacy. I'm like, I also bought him a Wii U, but I also so he's got a lot of nice gifts. I still have the PS Vita code lying around, so I'm going to give that away to somebody watching the show.
That works on any console. We had to give you one early because it didn't unlock. They did this new system because you could preload, and that caused a bunch of problems, right? So that's why the game didn't unlock until like the day before. Right. So when all the reviewers were like, sorry, we can't give you a key until the game launches, practically, which caused a bit of a hustle, but you know, whatever, stuff happens. But that should work on anything.
Okay, so
I'm doing hand gestures, but you can't actually see my hand. Doesn't matter.
So that'll work on PS3, PS4, and PS Vita.
Yeah, it'll do the cross-buy everything. You should have cross-buy too.
Even better. Yeah, I do. I do have cross-buy.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, so yeah, we'll be giving that away in some form. Probably do it by email, so you'll have to send me an email, jonathan@destructoid.com. I'll explain the details of the contest later. But still, I'm puzzled by this sales question. Do you think it might end up being something like, well, Super Meat Boy, Spelunky, a lot of games I can think of didn't make all of their biggest sales in the first week or even the first month. It was kind of a slow groundswell, and they ended up having a pretty long tail. Spelunky, I think, was around for like, oh, geez, was it a year and a half, 2 years before it was on sale at all? Maybe it was even longer than that. So.
I don't know. That's the thing. From what we've heard, it's like, in general, consoles seem to have a shorter tail than Steam or Valve, but we don't know. So we're very pessimistic, right? So we're like, okay, after the first launch, sales will drop to 0, right? So theoretically, yeah, we'll make our money back and maybe a little bit. But if the long tail turns out to be like crazy on consoles, that'd be great. We'd be super happy if it just sold at a nice consistent rate forever.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if it'll last forever, but that'd be nice.
Is there any chance of a crossover? This may be a question you can't answer, but so many games are doing crossover these days. I know there's, I don't know if you played 1001 Spikes. It's got like every character ever in it. Shovel Knight is popping up in every character. If there was some sort of Rogue Legacy crossover, people could have a little bit of a kick in the pants to try it, because like I was saying before, there's two kinds of people, those who love it and those who just haven't played it. I haven't talked to anybody else. So it's a matter of getting them to play it. Well, would you like to do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, our game is actually appearing in a few indie games that are coming up. A few that have been kickstarted, so that'll probably be like 2 years away. Sure. And then there's that game that the Glauber artist is working on, that board/strategy game. Mm-hmm. You can play as a knight in that game. That's kind of cool. Except drawn in that art style, so he's like super tall and cool looking instead of this, this dorky guy who runs around with a giant sword.
Sure. Have you played Shovel Knight? Would you want to do a Shovel Knight crossover? Would you feel guilty if you said no? No, you feel guilty.
I want to play Shovel Knight. I haven't played it yet. I've been a little busy, but
yeah, just a little.
Crossovers are cool. I like crossovers.
It is similar to Rogue Legacy in that Rogue Legacy, the down thrust is a big part of your overall strategy, or the nuts and bolts of Rogue Legacy to me oftentimes is about, do I want to take this enemy on from above, or do I want to take them on from the side? What's going to be safest for me? And Shovel Knight is very similar in that way. So in that regard, be a perfect fit. I don't know. If you ever want to talk to those guys, let me know. I'll get you.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah.
They're very nice people. Yeah. Let's dial it back a little bit. Autobiographical style. I don't know enough about you. I know you have a sister who it sounds like you wanted to make a game she would like, and that's part of why Rogue Legacy. You did name her specifically.
Oh no, for my brother. No,
Your
my
brother.
sister can't play this game. Yeah, it's a little too reflex intensive.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it was for my older brother. Is kind of like our main playtester, and just like us, he has a pretty limited patience, right? And he played games really weird. Like when I said, Bait and Kato's.
Oh, sure.
Like this game that came out on the GameCube way back. It's super hard card game. He beat that game at level 1. He beat the whole game without leveling his character. I could barely beat the game, and I was like level 79 or something. So he just does these weird things, and we're just like, stop playing games like that. That's not how you're supposed to play, right? So we're like trying to, as long as we accommodate him and he played it like the way we wanted to, right? Then sure. It all works out great.
Huh. What were some of the games growing up that you played by yourself, played amongst your family, that influenced you to start thinking about game design in general?
Oh, actually, I thought about games, like game design in general, at a really young age. Like, games were pretty popular when you were kids, right? But like even in the playground, when I was hanging out with my friends in elementary school and stuff, I could tell that I was like thinking about games way more than all of my friends were, right? So I would try not to bring it up just because I knew I was like this weird outlier. And pretty early on, I actually didn't enjoy games. Like I just didn't like them. Like I played them, but I was like, oh man, why do they keep doing all of these things? Why do they keep doing X, X, and X? And so I just started just going like, okay, maybe I'll try making my own game. And we just started making from there. Well, I actually started making way early. I think I was like 15 or 14 to 16, somewhere there. I'm really bad with time.
That's okay.
And like the first 3 games I made, and they're like really big games, but I just threw them out because they weren't of the standard that I wanted. Like I wasn't even happy with what I was making, and then I just kept making from then. So I've been making games for a really long time.
Yeah, I don't know how old you are, but it sounds like at least 8 years, 10 years.
Yeah, I'm 28 now, so.
Are you?
Yeah.
You look much younger.
I'm Asian, so you can't tell. That's just bonuses, I guess.
Yeah. Good genes. Can you tell us a little bit about the first 3 or so games you made? I'm pretty curious about what you thought. Well, and I love the fact that you're inspired not by like, oh, I want to make a game that's good. It's like, I want to make a game as good as it should be, because nobody's doing it right. So you like went in there full force, confident that you could do it, just like you have to be in Rogue Legacy, charge forward, full force, confident you can do it. You were like, I'm going to make these games, and then they weren't that good. What were they?
So there's this thing called RPG Maker.
Sure.
I think it was like one of the very first video game, like super simple video game makers out there. And when so the first 3 games I made were RPGs, and they were like pretty prototypical because I only knew how to use the tools. Like I didn't know what a variable was, and if you don't know anything about programming, a variable is kind of like the most basic thing that runs everything, right? Like you need a variable. A variable is what everything's built out of, and so those games were very generic, and I could only like tweak sliders and everything, and so it was pretty bad. And then I just kept using RPG Maker. And so I have those first 3, which were kind of duds and thrown out. The next 3 I made were adventure games, because I started tweaking around with the internals. And those I liked enough to post on the internet. I don't think, you can't find them anymore. Like, they're literally gone forever. But those did surprisingly well.
Huh.
This is in the RPG Maker, like, hemisphere. So one of my games was downloaded like 5,000 times. But that put it in like the top like 20 of the downloaded games, right? So I was like really happy with that, and I made the sequel to that and the third, which was like the finale because I had this whole idea planned. And actually, for me to make those 3 games probably took like a year and a half of my life. And then, and then I just kept going from there. That actually got my first job because when I applied at this company, they found it. The guy like did some background and he found it and he's like, oh, this is a pretty cool game. And so that got me the job, and not so much like my school education or stuff, which I'm grateful for because my school education sucked. Like I did not have good grades. So what I did at 14 actually got me the job, and not what I did at like 20 and on in school.
It's where your passion was. It wasn't in school necessarily. It sounds like you were spending a year and a half of some hard thinking and risk-taking time. Instead of taking tests, you were making a trilogy of adventure games.
Well, I mean, I was doing that after school, right? So I'm sure it destroyed my school grades as well.
What was the game? What was the trilogy of adventure games about? And by adventure, do you mean like Legend of Zelda adventure? Do you mean like Castlevania-style adventure?
Adventure, point and click. But it wasn't point and click because I couldn't do that. So it's like you moved your character with the arrow key and you just pressed enter to look at objects. But it's called like the Pangaea Chronicles. And don't look it up because I'm embarrassed by them now. It's full of typos. It's pretty immature. And I'm super embarrassed that I was like 15 or something when I made that, right? Because it's like, oh man, this guy's got like the literacy of a 10-year-old. Just of all typos.
Well, you had other priorities. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Typos.
School wasn't a priority, obviously.
Yeah, typos. You wanted to create. Whether you were following the rules of how spelling happened wasn't the most exciting part for you. You were excited to like make a thing and see if you could really do it. Yeah. That's so. I personally would like to play those someday. I wonder if I'll be able to track them down. Did you like point and click or adventure? Wandering, exploring, finding stuff, solving puzzles.
That's my favorite genre. Like, above and beyond, it's my favorite genre. We played so many of those games as kids. And, like, those were, like, we'd play games, like, we'd play Darklands or we'd try, like, Rondor. I'm not sure if anybody knows about those games anymore. But those are all, like, kind of single-player experiences. And so when the whole family is playing these games, they're a little bit isolated. But adventure games is always, like, me and my 2 brothers and my sister, we'd play it all together. So those were always, like, the most fun. And I like them, well, I shouldn't say I like them most. I want to make one the most because they're so outdated. Like, the first adventure game came out, it was text, which sucked. Does suck. But then you go to point and click, and the moment, like, the first point and click game came out, they haven't changed since. Nobody bothered fixing anything that's wrong with the genre. Like, the only thing they've done is simplified it, but that's not what the genre needed. Right? It needed many other things. And we actually made an adventure game, me and my brother, called I Have One Day, and that's like our favorite game we've ever made. It did well. Like, it got a couple of million hits, which we're super happy with, but it didn't like sell well. So we put it out, and we knew it wouldn't sell well, but then it sold so poorly. We're like, oh man, even though we love making this genre, we can't like ever do it again just because it doesn't pay the bills.
What's the name of the game again?
I Have One Day. And we like it's cool. I like it a lot. It's an adventure game where you can rewind time, right? So there's like this meta puzzle where you have to beat the game in as short a time as possible. So there's multiple solutions to everything, but then you just taking into accordance how long each task takes.
Hmm.
Yeah, everybody should try it out.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, for
God's will
everybody
be
we get
watching.
a quarter
Sorry.
of a penny, so you're paying it all.
Absolutely. And it's something that seems to be coming back in vogue in different ways. Walking Dead, of course, Telltale's games, sort of point and click, but not. I guess
Yeah,
those are
I tell
adventures.
they're much more. I like them. I like the first season. I haven't downloaded the second yet, but they're more narrative, and they're not so much like it's interactive and I like it a lot, but it's not like the puzzle solving. You're gonna put cork into a spoon and stop bomb. I don't know.
Sure. I don't know if you played McPixel.
No, I haven't played McPixel. I've seen people play it, and it's cool, but it's not my type of style. If that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. It's almost WarioWare meets point and click.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny. Yeah. But watching a video of it is almost as funny as playing it.
Yeah. Plus, it kind of emphasizes the random thing like this. Like I think one of them was like defuse a bomb by putting ketchup on it, and then somebody eats it. I hope I just spoiled it. You're gonna get a whole lot of but it's like, that's not what we wanted. We wanted more serious. Like, I'm actually solving it, and it makes logical sense.
Sure. And that's one of the biggest complaints people have about point and click is that at a certain point you feel like you're just following a path and not actually using your brain to unwind something or untie it on in some way. Yeah.
It's a very hard genre to make in, but like we still one day, maybe if we have like 3 more successes, we'll be like, okay, we can take a big loss and we'll make an adventure game. Just lose all our money on it.
I hope so. I don't know. Gods Will Be Watching. I haven't played it yet. I've read the reviews, but it sounds like it almost took a bit from your idea. A lot of it's time-based. You have to. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's point and click-ish. You've got the first mission in it. You've got a bunch of hostages. You have to decide, are you going to be a terrible jerk to them in order to get the people who are trying to kill you off your back, or are you going to... So there's a lot of moral decision and puzzle solving with a clock ticking the whole time.
Sounds like 24. But yeah, no, that sounds pretty cool. I mean, I haven't played. I heard about it. I heard it when it was like a Ludum Dare game, I think.
Oh, that's right.
Popularity. I didn't even know it came out. I didn't even know I knew they were making it. I didn't know it came out. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Fast turnaround. So
sure.
Yeah, I should pick it up.
It's not particularly long. I think you can get through it, and if you just are perfect and never screw up, like half hour or something like that. So.
Okay, cool.
Sounds like you've had your head in this game development thing pretty deep. Do you get to do other stuff?
What do you mean, like hobbies?
Yeah, like living.
Oh, no. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I've got hobbies, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing because like when we were poor, right? And like when you're poor, I don't think you think of yourself as poor in that sense.
Sure.
And it's kind of hard to explain, but like we didn't grow up with TV, right? Because we can't afford cable or anything.
Okay.
So I don't know. It just feels like with me and my family, we're kind of cultureless. Not as in we're heathens and we don't know anything about etiquette. But it's like people go, oh man, have you watched like Spider-Man the Kids Show, which was on when we were kids, and X-Men, and we try to watch it, but you could only get, you go to this channel, it's all staticky, and that's how we'd watch it, right? So all of these things which was pop culture for us back then, which is 90% what comes out of TV, we didn't have. So all of these hobbies and things that people would just kind of accrue, or just have these loves for, we didn't really get, because like Pog, man, everybody played Pog. I didn't play Pog. I don't know.
I believe I didn't play that either. I was about 10 years older than you, so I kind of aged out of that, unfortunately. But I'm still pretty sure I know that they're called Pogs.
Oh, I don't know, man. I had like 4 Pogs, and they came from like one of those kids' chests, where it's like, oh, here's a free toy, and it was like Pogs from McDonald's.
I don't know. I think you like kick them at other people. It's kind of like
yeah,
something like that. Never played it, but you could. Your family didn't have cable, but you did have a computer. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. my dad was like pushed like super heavy on us getting a good education.
Uh-huh.
Or typical Asians, like, oh, you got to get good grades. I always disappointed my father on that front. No, like, he took it well. But yeah, so he got a computer because he thought it was like really important. And now he regrets getting us a computer because we all got addicted to the computer, and he's like, oh, get off the computer, right? But it's his fault.
So
yeah.
the only reason you had a computer, you're guessing, is because it was practical. It sounds like money was tight, but your father still prioritized your ability to grow and learn and be able to make money of your own someday. And then you just ended up playing tons of adventure games. On what kind of computer? What kind of computer did you have?
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, everything back then was like a P100. I don't know. Super slow. We ran, first through DOS and then through 95 when that came out, which was amazing.
Sure.
And then so forth. But I don't know. I don't know anything about computer specs. It's all my brother. My brother is also programmer, producer, and everything. He also builds all the computers and stuff. So he's like the tech head.
Huh. And where did you end up going to college?
Oh, I went to the University of Guelph, which was like a school. It's a pretty good school, but not for programming. It's more for like agriculture, like high-tech agriculture. Like that's what they're known for, right? So they'll do like agriculture research. But all the other schools turned me down. So then I went that one. That's how I choose my universities, like which one I give some permission.
I'm right there with you. I got straight D's in high school, so I ended up going to art school. It's kind of the way to sneak in to college, even though you'd never proved that you actually did when you do any schoolwork, because I did not. Then eventually I got a master's degree, and my grades were okay then, so it was more about my priorities at the time. They were definitely not in just learning some stuff somebody thought I should know in order to prove to somebody else that I was the kind of person who jumps through a lot of hoops. I just couldn't get excited about it. It sounds like similar experience for you.
Yeah, pretty similar. I hated learning stuff which I knew I wouldn't need ever in my life.
Sure.
Right? So I'd always put like minimal amount of effort into it. I think I might have just been lazy. So who knows? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't believe. I spend a lot of time thinking about words. Sometimes it annoys people. So if you get annoyed, just let me know. But lazy is a word I try not to use, not because it's not accurate, but because it doesn't explain a whole lot. Like also, I try not to just say, "Oh, the game's bad." Like, well, what's bad about it? Like, if you don't tell me what you didn't like about it, then I'm not actually learning anything other than your opinion. So lazy is just like an opinion, like you should have done work, but you didn't for some reason. When you dig into it, you can get to the explanation of why. It's oftentimes because people are rebellious or anxious and expecting the worst, or they're just like, screw you, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. I can do my own thing. With me, it's definitely a combination of both. I have a screw you attitude and a I don't want to screw up attitude that'll get me to not want to take a test pretty quick.
Yeah, I agree. Lazy was a bad choice of words. I knew exactly why. But yeah, I knew exactly why I didn't like school. One of the big reasons was I actually wanted to be a teacher when I was a kid, right? Because when I was in school, I was like, oh man, why are they teaching it this way? Like, because I wasn't learning how they wanted to learn, and rote memorization was like I felt like the worst way to go about it, and that's kind of the standard for how the school education system is.
Sure.
But one of the big reasons was the fact that having to learn things which you didn't need to learn feels like a waste of time, right?
Sure.
And it's like I don't want to waste my limited brain space with learning French. Unfortunately, sorry to everybody who speaks French. I actually should have failed high school, but they gave me a passing grade because I think it was like hidden in the notes. But it was like, don't make anybody fail French. So they gave me a 50, even though I think my average was 30. So thanks to the teachers for that.
Wow. Do you feel like you've proven your intelligence now, that you've done a thing that I could never do, most people I know could never do, creating a video game? Even if you didn't create it all on your own, to be a part of the heavy lifting that goes into creating something like Rogue Legacy, I think is pretty phenomenal.
I don't know if I've heard a point or anything, but I am happy. I mean, honestly, if I didn't do good at this, I'd feel pretty awful because it's like the only thing I can do. And then I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Right? So I'm happy for that. But I do think that I'm a believer in talent. I think, like, I'm pretty sure there's a gene there which makes people really good at one specific thing. So I don't know. I think, like, this was my calling. And I think a lot of kids, you know, they just need to find out what their exact calling is. And it's not what they like. I know this might sound bad, but because I've been in the industry, right, and there's a whole lot of designers and stuff, and I think there's a skill gap in the industry right now, which kind of needs to be fixed a bit. That's just my opinion. I just think because a lot of people, I don't know how to explain it.
Let me try to help because I think I'm getting it, but I want to be sure. Are you saying that a lot of people love video games, so they think I'm going to get in the industry because I love playing these things, but the skill that it takes to actually be able to do something one would be proud of, one would be effective at, isn't always there with a lot of people that are jumping in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of. And like when I say that and I talk about talent, and you know how people go, oh, this person, he's such a good artist and he's 14 years old, right? It's like, how did he get there? What you don't know is that people who usually are talented at this usually have kind of an obsession, right? So that kid was probably drawing since he was 6. So even if you're drawing at 18, he's probably drawn, you know, more than you will your entire life just because he's got like 8 years ahead of you. And like the same thing with me, right? Like I didn't make DSYP wasn't my first game. It wasn't even my 6th game, right? It was like my 8th game that I've made. It's just because I've been making games for so long, and the same thing with my brother. We've got a lot of years of experience on us, so that just really helps out.
And you gained that experience, even though you failed so many times along the way. You just loved it. You couldn't have stopped thinking about it even if you wanted to. It sounds like you were on the playground and you were thinking, I'm thinking about video games so much harder than the other kids, but I don't want them to know. Like it sounds like at that age you would have switched it off if you could, but it just wasn't switching off.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know. And I think about it too much. I need to stop.
No, it's very good. I love it. I'm so glad you have a brain like this because now I get to play your video games. Do you think it's inherent, like genetic? Do you think that no matter how your life would have gone, you would have ended up being the kind of person that wants to solve these kinds of problems and create these kinds of opportunities for other people to solve problems, and in doing so, getting to know the way your brain works? Because that's more or less what I take from your game development style.
Yeah, I mean, I think if games didn't exist, I'd probably make, I don't know, Choose Your Own Adventures.
Yeah.
Or something, you know, just something along a similar vein, just because. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you can't help it.
I thought there for a second.
It's genetic, just like Rogue Legacy. There's so many ways.
Oh, yeah, it all comes full circle.
It's all turning out, it's totally autobiographical. So many of the games are that people make that I talk to on this show. And you wanted to be a teacher. You wanted to kindly but directly show people how to do stuff, and that's game design 9 times out of 10.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think I would have been a bad teacher though, because I don't know anything. I don't know any field well enough to teach it.
Well, you've created the vessel for people to learn, be open-minded and curious, and try to shoot forward and find out what the world has in store for them in video game. If instead of finding out new traits of your characters that are made up, if I was finding out about like the 50 states, you could turn Rogue Legacy into a geography game where all the aspects that you pick up are just the names of stuff. And I'd learn all those names because it's like I care. I want to know. It's the delivery method. You've got it down, sir.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah.
I'd like to make an education game one day. I think
really?
that's probably like one of the hardest genres to make. When I say education, I mean like hardcore education, like learning fractions or something, but not being boring. That'd be hard because I still don't know how to do that.
Yeah. I thought Frog Fractions was a good start.
Oh yeah, until I've been retarded. That game's awesome. I like that game a lot.
Jim, you rascal. Frog Fractions 2 is coming out. Jim Crawford, neat guy. I like him a lot. Questions happened. I guess we can get to a few of them. I feel like I didn't find out as much about you as I wanted to, though. Maybe I can dig
Oh,
back into that. Yeah, I'm so curious about you, Teddy Lee. You're both open and enigmatic at the same time. You're like a open mystery, which is a lot of fun.
I'm a pretty mysterious guy. I don't know.
He who bags the tea asks, I've seen some criticisms of that I'm sorry, let me read this again. I've seen criticisms that the funny traits in Rogue Legacy, like colorblindness, didn't really add much to the game from the mechanics perspective. What's your perspective on the funny traits?
I mean, I like them. I wouldn't remove them. So I wouldn't say colorblindness is a funny trait. Like I'd say more like IBS or copropralia are funny traits where you guys just like swears. Colorblindness is definitely, I don't want to say a negative trait, but it's detrimental to the gameplay in the sense that it's harder. Now the whole point of that was to kind of let RNG be king, right? In the very beginning, where you had to go. If you got, let's say, a ninja, which I know a lot of people like, especially in the beginning, but if you get a colorblind ninja, it makes seeing projectiles extremely difficult, right? So we want players to have that kind of trade-off. Now the trade-off isn't so severe. Isn't severe enough in the game right now because there's no consequence for just letting your guy die. And we knew that was an issue, and it might be something we try to fix. I mean, we had this rogue mode all planned out, which would make these kind of funny traits that they're talking about, or these detrimental traits, much more of a consequence. We weren't able to get it in. It's too expensive. The Sony version, where we put in this achievement where you have to beat the game with 15 lives or less, those kind of funny traits now become much more serious, right? Because you can't ignore it. You can't just throw a character and die. You will have to roll with a character who is colorblind sooner or later, and you will have to accommodate. And like that's the whole point of this game. It's accommodating for all these changes to your character and how to play. So,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you know from pretty early on that you wanted there to be traits that were good, neutral, or detrimental? You wanted to do the full spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, when we made it, we wanted a few detrimental, so that you might not want to pick your character, this specific character. We wanted some that are good, but extremely few, because the problem with good traits is there's no decision making, right? Because if you can get colorblindness, or you can get a guy who gives like plus 20% to attack damage, well, you're never going to pick the colorblind. You're just going to pick these boring traits which are better. So those are all purposely very rare. Our ideal traits are always the trade-offs. So gigantism and dwarfism are the two best examples. Endomorph is pretty good because you get the low knockback, which is beneficial for certain classes but not for others. Like if you're a mage, you don't want to be an endomorph because you kind of want to get away and all that kind of stuff. So those are the ideals, but you can't always make everything completely ideal. At least not for our development schedule.
Sure. And completely ideal, that's like the Superman problem. Like, if I'm just the best, then there's nothing dynamic, there's no contradiction, there's nothing interesting about this. I'm just as good as I can be without ever wondering, like, I wonder what would have happened if I did something else. I wonder what other possibilities there are moving forward. You'll just think, oh, I had the best character once, and I just wish I had him all the time, which would...
Yeah. That's not what the point of the game is.
Right. I think I just have this feeling that I've screwed up this week. And I think what I feel like I've screwed the whole week up, this whole show, I've done something terrible, and I'm trying to think of what it is. I'm pretty sure it's that I never actually asked you, or did so myself. We haven't even described what Rogue Legacy is.
Oh.
What have I done?
Kind of late now.
Kind of late now. Yes.
Man. Okay, so I've asked this question a bunch. It's going to sound kind of hacked, but sorry about that. So Rogue Legacy is a genealogical rogue light, and we say light instead of like because we add permanence to the game. So your character gets better and better and better. So if you have issues, or if you have trouble beating the really hardcore roguelike games, we made this game purposefully so that it be more appealing to a larger audience. It accommodate more playstyles. So you'll eventually be able to grind enough to make your guy beat the game. So, yeah.
And so many different variables. I'm trying to picture how you mapped all this out, because the amount of systems theory and algorithms and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's so many classes, like you mentioned. There's ninja, there's paladin, there's wizard, there's the character's weight comes into effect, their size comes into effect, there's weapons, there's spells, there's platforming, there's different types of attacks. Like, how did you coordinate all of this in a way where it didn't just fall apart?
Through a lot of bug fixing. I mean, it fell apart a lot. So there was a lot of fixes, right, just when you're working with a system like that. And it did kind of help that we actually cut down on the amount of randomization that was going into the game. Like, every random variable that's being introduced is slightly isolated, right? So when it rolls your character, it's like it'll roll a pool of spells from a subset for that character class. It'll roll a character class, then it'll roll these traits, and those are 3 separate algorithms which are going off. So that helped us out a bit. When you've got games like Minecraft's World Builder, that's like one gigantic algorithm, which we don't know how to do that. We're not super, we're not that good in the mathematics department for creating an ocean. I don't know.
I can't even begin to fathom what it would be like to do that, or to do what you did even. And to have the confidence to say, okay, this is going to be a ton of work. We're taking a ton of risks. We're making a game about a ton of risks, and also it's going to be a huge risk to make it. We're just going to hope we roll up something decent, even though you're dealing with so many different variables at any given time, yet you push forward with it. Was it because you were so excited about the idea? Was it because, in part, it was a family project, so you didn't want to let each other down? Was it a combination of the two? Was it something else?
I'll say money was a big motivation. Not money because, we're going to be rich off this, but, the need for it to be somewhat successful. Successful being in the sense that we make back our costs and hopefully a bit more to justify the amount of time we spent. Mm-hmm. So that was, a big motivation. The idea, this might sound bad, not so much. I mean, we just like making games for the challenge. So we've made a bunch of games for Flash, I think 5 or 6, and every single one's in a different genre. Rogue Legacy's in a genre which we've never done before, just because we're just because we've been thinking about games for so long. So every single time we're just I wanted to do something in this genre, or I want to try and tweak it so that we can bring something new to it. Right, because that was kind of the appeal for Rogue Legacy. It wasn't this idea that we've had percolating in our head for 14 or 20 years, right? It's just something that we wanted to tackle. That's our motivation, right? Is to take the challenge.
I guess so. It sounds so hard. It sounds so hard. Most people, when they're saying, I want a challenge today, they boot up a video game or they play football or something. You were taking that challenge, really making it your life, and if it didn't work out, then what are you going to eat? Are you going to be in the homeless shelter, kind of thing? It's
yeah,
huge risk. And
yeah, we did save up a lot of money before we started this game, right? Because we've been working my brother worked at a Business Wire. I worked at a couple of game companies, right? So we've always been saving up money because we're very, very safe. Just because when you're born, or when your childhood is pretty poor, right? You take saving money and everything very seriously.
Oh, sure.
So we've been very level-headed about that stuff. I know it doesn't sound as interesting as people. I've only got $10 and I'm going to lose my home and stuff like that. But
I've been I was brought up relatively poor. Ronald Reagan, I don't know if you know who he is. Probably. He's president. He was president while I was a kid. He sent us cheese because we were so poor. He's like, eat the cheese. So I ate Ronald Reagan cheese, government cheese, as a kid. So I have some idea of poverty, and it definitely affected the way I think, too. I was so chicken that I was going to use the spinach in the Popeye game at, the not perfect time that I just never used the spinach. I always have to save the spinach, and I always save my money. I never want to take the risk that maybe I'll need this for something more important later because I might not get it later.
I can totally relate.
Absolutely. And what can you talk about what? That's another thing I didn't ask. Jeez, terrible week this week. All my fault. You're doing great, Teddy. You're wonderful. I'll get over it. Did you work on other commercial games that maybe people didn't know about for game development companies?
Yeah, I've worked at. I think the one that I'm least known for is a game called Pizza Palace. So this website called Webkins. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Lovekins?
Webkins.
Webkins. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kids game which was massive. Like, I can't say the statistics because they're hidden, but they were like, because they were a private company, like nobody knew, but they were larger than the vast majority of MMORPGs out
Really?
there.
Webkins.
Yeah, it's a kids site. I don't. They're not big anymore, unfortunately. I think they've fallen off over the time.
Sure.
But I made a game for that called Pizza Palace, and that game was averaging over 1 million plays a day, like by a huge proportion. And like it was like this huge thing, and like everybody really liked it. And that was like one of my big achievements. I was really happy about that.
What was Pizza Palace like?
Pizza Palace was a time management game, which I love. I love time management games, and there's all these problems with it. So when I made Pizza Palace, I wanted to fix those, and shelled it out. And the target audience was, I don't want to say this might sound sexist, but this is the target audience because that's what played the game, was like 8-year-old kids to 40-year-old mothers.
Okay.
Yeah, literally 40-year-old mothers is like the target audience, right? So being able to hit that spectrum was pretty amazing. And like
millions of plays a day?
Yeah, it was really pretty popular. Well, the site itself is a big reason for it, right? Because it's so popular. But there's like the way they did it. There's like 40 games on that site, and so like right off the bat, that game was always like first or second in the plays daily. So it's pretty happy, especially because like when it was being made, because everybody there is like a guy, right? And so they'd have like this peer review of it, and then one of them was like, I think we should cancel this project, right? It's like, oh, this game is so boring, I don't want to play it, right? We should cancel it now and save the money. And I was like, don't cancel it, right? And it came out well. So I was like, that's the one I'm least known for.
Wow, Pizza Palace.
Yeah.
Pizza Palace. How did it feel to go from millions of plays a day on Pizza Palace to like wondering how? Because no offense to Pizza Palace, I'm sure it's a very good game. But I have this feeling that Rogue Legacy is something that's even better by my standards, my opinion anyway. Maybe by yours too. Or do you prefer Pizza Palace overall?
I really like Pizza Palace. Honestly, if I ever got the chance, I would remake it.
Really?
It's a kid's game, but it's super hard.
Is it better than Rogue Legacy, in your opinion? Pizza Palace? Wow, that is an awesome game.
No. It's a good game. I liked it. I like it a lot. I think I don't know. It's a stupid game where you're making pizzas for bunnies and rabbits.
Why wouldn't I want to
do the same thing?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Sign me up. The bunnies and the rabbits.
It's crazy difficult.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. Like Rogue Legacy's hard, and just seeing these 40-year-old mothers acing the game is pretty insane. Like literally, I bet if I gave it to a bunch of like pro players, they'd have a hard time. That game, your APM has to be like 200 per second to beat that game. I don't know how they're doing it.
And then more questions came in. I'm being a jerk and ignoring them. I will do these questions now, and then hopefully I'll have time to ask you a couple more things too. Jesse Ball asks, did you always plan to release Rogue Legacy on Sony platforms after Microsoft Windows, OS X, and the Linux versions? Will you ever consider a Wii U or Xbox One release? I'm sure you get asked this a lot.
So, yeah, we were, not always planning, we were hoping. Right, so the biggest one was I was working on a game during the launch of the Vita, right? And so our game was going out onto the Vita, but it originally wasn't made for the Vita. The Vita has, I think, 2 left buttons than your standard controller, right? Left trigger, right trigger, and that was a huge problem because the game used one of those buttons. So when Rogue Legacy was being made, like we were just playing it on keyboard and stuff, but it had 1 extra button. And early on in development, I was like, if this game does really well, it played really good on the Vita. And the control scheme wouldn't accommodate. So let's rethink this control scheme, get rid of that extra button. We did, and then, it's coming out on Vita, so that stupid, vision we had way back paid off. But yeah,
so the Vita helped influence the creation of, or the specifics about the controls of Rogue Legacy.
Yeah.
Oh.
So like flight, if you have flight runes and you have jump runes, flight will trigger once you're out of double jumps.
Mm.
Right? Before we had a separate button for that, and the reason we wanted that was because we're like, oh, we can add additional runes which could be applied to this extra button press.
Uh-huh.
But then we're like, okay, we can't do it, so let's sync it all up and try and accommodate that, and so that's how this came about.
Cool, huh? Thank you, PlayStation Vita.
Yeah, thanks for
have to worry about. Wii U, he's asking about. People not asking about 3DS for some reason. I think people assume that because 3DS isn't Unity, it's just out of the cards for a lot of people if they want to do multi-platform. Whereas Wii U, Xbox One, PS4, PS3, I think Vita as well are all Unity. Is there any interest in porting to more consoles?
I mean, porting was pretty brutal, but we have a agreement, a limited exclusivity with Sony, right? So we can't actually talk about any of that stuff.
Sure.
But I mean, it'd be kind of cool to release it on those, but we'd have to see. The odds of it being on the Wii U are slim, though, just because unless you have Nintendo on it, I don't think you sell on those consoles. So we'll see. We're actually teaming up with 8-4.
Oh yeah.
There's like this translation company, which is like they're super cool. And they're going to try and help market our game in Japan. So if the game does well in Japan, then maybe we'll talk about it. But apparently, like, doing well in Japan is like 1,000 copies, which isn't like, won't cover any costs at all, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how the market is and how, like you were saying before, Nintendo games sell pretty well in the Wii U. I've heard some eShop games sell very well in the Wii U. I've heard some do not. So it's hard to say if your game is going to match the brand of the consumer who's looking for a certain thing. Like, it's a mind-reading job at that point. Sounds pretty impossible. Did you end up going with Sony consoles because you thought that's where your audience might be?
Well, we actually went to Sony consoles because Sony contacted us, and they're really easy to work with. Like, when it got near the end, things got messy because there's so many people. Like, there's so many people doing stuff at Sony, it's so huge that things would kind of slow down. But I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. That doesn't really matter. It was like a pinky promise. Like, we met with Shahid. He contacted us on Skype. And this was, I think, 48 hours before Gamescom or something.
Oh, wow.
One of the major things. And he was like, hey, we'd really like to get onto the Vita. We get your game onto the PlayStation, right? And he's like, oh, if you do it for us, right? If you want it to be on it, just say yes, and we can sync up something, right? And he's like, pinky swear. And I was like, okay, pinky swear. And then they showed it at GDC and everything, and it got nice press and stuff. So we haven't signed a contract. It's all been just a promise.
It's all pinky swear.
Yeah. No, don't do that. Don't do that, people. Like, that's risky. It's just like it worked out, and like we've actually worked with other people, and honestly, if you don't get the contract, usually you're gonna get screwed. So Sony could have screwed us hardcore. Sure. And you know what? They've been all out on this, and so that's been really cool.
Huh. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's not. I'm hearing rumor that. Lone Survivor, I don't know if you played that game, it also didn't do as well as people had hoped on Sony consoles, because I think it also went up against The Last of Us, except like the first time The Last of Us came out.
Man, Last of Us is screwing indies over, man.
Son of a bitch! The game needs to stop it.
Yeah.
Take a break.
They're being so mean, man. I don't know. But, yeah. That's a problem, I think, not a problem, but when you are on console, you are competing with AAA. Like, it's a one-to-one competition, right?
Sure.
As opposed to, I think on Steam, if an indie game comes out, unless it's like Grand Theft Auto 5 or something, people will buy the indie games regardless of what AAA game is coming out.
Sure.
Yeah. A little tougher on Sony.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a story that's yet to be fully written.
Yeah, we don't have a heuristic or anything.
Elias Games asks, would you say that the hidden object genre could be considered an evolution of the point-and-click genre? And what's your opinion about hidden object games?
Hidden object games. I think some it depends, because I've played a bunch of them. I don't know what. But they're very stagnant. Hidden object games are very stagnant. There are some that are better, but the biggest problem with hidden object games is it's always find this. I don't know if you've played them.
A little.
Yeah, but it's like find this fish, and then they put it in a pool of fish. It's like World War or whatever, and that's not too appealing for me. My brother likes it a lot more. I'm very bad at them. I end up just clicking. But the way they are trying to fix all these issues is they throw in mini games. So it's like, oh, you finished this hidden object. Now here's a crossword. Now do the crossword. You know, and it's like it's just this amalgamation of mini games. So I think the hidden object genre could definitely get better. They just need to fix the fundamentals, but nobody wants to do that. Although I don't know, because I think they sell like 1 million copies. These are like on Big Fish. Yeah, these are on Big Fish. It's a different audience, but yeah, I think the audience may be too complacent.
Sure. I think of the Ace Attorney games as kind of extension of point and click and a little bit of hidden object. I don't know if you played those. You'll just poke around looking for evidence, but you're staying emotionally invested because the story is there, and you know that whatever evidence you find, you're going to have to put together in a larger puzzle. So the motivation and the excitement are both they usually hang in there for long enough that you don't get bored, but there are times when I'm just sick of poking around a room looking for a murder weapon or whatever, but 9 times out of 10 they pull it off pretty well.
Yeah. No, Phoenix Wright does it well. I mean, the way we actually did it for I Have One Day is we did a highlight system. So whenever you mouse over an object, so let's say you mouse over an object and it's like a door, so you can click on it, the entire door frame lights up. So that removes, you know how you like play the old Monkey Island games, you just click, 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 and hear the same dialogue 100 times? Now it's just like you mouse over, and when you mouse over that door, well, you know, one, it's interactable, and two, you know everything within that zone is now non-interactable. So it's like clearing out huge chunks of this, mouse over.
Sure.
And I'm kind of upset because these different games came out, and I was like, oh, they're totally going to hopefully rip off of us, but they don't. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to play. No, I like Broken Age a lot, but then I played Broken Age, and I was still doing that. Oh, look, I'm going over the top, I'm going over the second row, third row, and it's just like, man, like I felt bad because Broken Age didn't do anything different. I was surprised at how little it did for the genre.
I think they were focused on the story and the vocal talent and the blah, blah, blah. But in terms of yeah, it's all great.
I can't wait for the sequel, or not the sequel, I don't even know what you call
part
it.
2, the second half. Yeah.
Second half of it, but it was kind of depressing on a mechanical level.
Yeah, I could see that, certainly. Smelly Friend asks, what were your inspirations behind the bosses? And which is your favorite? Rogue Legacy does have bosses. They would and the mid-bosses scare the crap out of me every time I see them. But then I think, oh, money! And then I get brave, because I know that I could get a lot of cash for killing those giant skeletons and whatnot. So, yes, the bosses of Rogue Legacy. How'd you come up with them, and do you have a favorite? Okay,
so the inspiration for the bosses didn't come from anything in particular. It more or less came from the issues we've had with bosses. So this might get a little technical. I hope that's okay. Just
no, it's good.
This question a lot.
We love
so
yes.
A few things we wanted to fix with bosses is, so one issue with bosses, it's not that big an issue, it's more personal taste, is that people will go into a boss fight and then it's just like, I gotta find out what he does, and then you kind of get reamed by them.
Sure.
Right? And they're like, oh, that's not really fun. So we purposefully made every single boss an expansion of a typical enemy. Right? So like the eyeball is an expansion of that eyeball, the fireball is an expansion of the fireballs, and we get flack for that. But what that lets people do is when they go into that boss fight, like when you go into the eyeball fight, people automatically know this eyeball is not going to move. Its primary attack is going to be projectiles. Right? Maybe you have to learn the projectile pattern, but it alleviates so much kind of new rule that you have to learn.
Sure.
So that really helps out a lot on that part. So that's one of the things that inspired us, was to remove the learning curve right off the get-go. So the second thing has to do kind of with balancing. So I guess there's two extremes. You've got like Devil May Cry 3 and you've got Ninja Gaiden, right? So they both have pretty cool bosses. But Devil May Cry 3 makes a boss maybe take like 30 hits to die, right? And they take like 300 hits. And then in Ninja Gaiden, you'll die in 2 hits, but you can kill them in like 5 hits. That's just kind of a flow difference. And we definitely wanted to go more the Devil May Cry way, right? Because we wanted people to be able to take damage but still learn. Like we wanted people to be able to learn these mechanics and everything while they're fighting, as opposed to dying a couple of times before you learn. So that's in terms of the balancing window. And finally, we wanted to make enemy bosses proactive. So, so the best example I have is like if you played Gears of War 2. This is super old, but the example I have. Remember that boss, the final boss you fight, and he turns out to be like 6 quick time events or something? Like you just dodge him and then you shoot a spike and the spike falls on him and you do that 3 times over. That's what boss fights have become recently, and I hate those boss fights. It's like, oh, find out how you're supposed to beat him, and then you got to beat him this way. And during that time, you're just this passive passenger, just waiting for the events to occur. So when we made our bosses, we made it so that every single time an action's happening, you should always be able to be attacked, right? So if you're really good, you're going to beat this boss in 5 seconds. But if you want to play it safe, you can take 10 minutes, right? So every single boss has windows where you can attack them, and that's up to the player's choice. So like Ponce de Leon, who's the giant fireball who chases you, when he does his dashes and stuff, he stands idle so you can hit him. When he dashes towards you, if you dash back, it's a small window where you possibly can hit him. When he's just moving to attack you, you can hit him by backstepping, right? So like literally at every single period of time, you can be dealing damage to him if you're good enough, right? And you get these players who are beating these bosses really quickly because of that. Right. So that was like, that's really minutia. But these are all these rules that we're following when we make these bosses.
This is exactly what people want to hear about, because so many people watching the show, I'm assuming, are thinking, how can I ever do what this person has done? And it's you have to think about it at that level of depth, but also that level of variance.
And this is where I get to the point where I say I don't talk to my friends, right? Because most people don't care about this stuff, but it's what drives me insane.
No, I'm on the edge of my seat, and I'm wondering, while you've been talking the whole time, it's been bouncing in and out of my head, and it's just bounced back in. Are there any specific franchises you wish you could take on and fix? Because since you were a kid, you've been like, I love the idea of this game, but I know how it should have been done, and it didn't work out, and it's motivated you. Are there any that's really itchy for you, like, if I could only fix Castlevania, which some would say you did with Rogue Legacy, or only fix Mega Man, or only fix so-and-so?
Probably the Zelda franchise. But then the new game came out, and that was way better. I don't know if it's better. I played it, and then my DS got stolen, or my 3DS got stolen, so I lost everything. And I was like, oh man, should I buy it again and play it? And I haven't. So I only got to like Castle 4 or something. But I liked where it was going. It was very creative. Like they gave you all the tools, and it was a huge jump up from, I might be pissing people off, but from like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Like I haven't liked the previous Zelda games for quite a while now.
Did you like Ocarina of Time?
I liked Ocarina of Time. I haven't replayed it. I don't usually replay games. So I'm not sure if that game is because of nostalgia or if because it was actually way better than Twilight Princess and stuff.
It's hard to... Yeah, I'm still puzzling over that myself. Won't get into my opinion too much, but 2D Zelda is more or less where it's at for me.
Yeah.
And Link Between Worlds, I mean, definitely brought it back to that. I wonder if you'd like it. I want to just buy you video game consoles and play them.
I'll take that. I mean, like right off the bat, one thing they did, which is way better than the new or the older 3D Zelda games, was items didn't become worthless. Right. So like in Twilight Princess, you get the double hook shot, I shouldn't even say it, hook shot, right? And then you use the hook shot for that level, and you don't use anything else. And then in next stage you get the bomb, and then you don't use anything but the bomb. It's kind of stupid, right? You accrue an inventory, like 20 plus items, and you never use them except for that one instance of the dungeon. And it's like, oh man, you're wasting the whole point of Zelda, which was mixing and matching. Like Link's Awakening, right? Like you attach the boots and the jump, and then you can run jump, and then that's a puzzle in itself, but you're using items from the first dungeon that's used in the third.
I think that was actually... Oh, it is Link's Awakening. You're right. The Game Boy.
Yeah. I love that one.
That's probably the best one. Yeah, out of the 2D Zeldas design-wise. I mean, Link to the Past has a lot of the visuals and ideas that I like, but design, Link's Awakening is tough to beat.
Yeah, Link's Awakening was really good, and I think a lot of people played that. I don't know. That was on the Game Boy. I don't know if the game was popular when it came out.
I don't know.
It came out late in its life cycle, right?
I think so. Yeah, but it was in there for the Game Boy Color, which did alright, I think. Oh, ding
No,
dong.
that was the Capcom ones.
Oh, that's
I don't know. That was like when I was like 6. I don't know. That game was a long time ago. I don't
yeah, it
remember.
was. Yeah, indeed. Alan McGee asks, any chance of Don't Shit Your Pants sequel? You talked about that a little bit, but Alan McGee, 23, really wants that to happen. Don't Shit Your Pants sequel. For people who don't know, Don't Shit Your Pants is a game where you're a guy who looks kind of like me, and he's sitting out in front of a bathroom, and you have to type commands as to what you want to do, and it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, we were gonna make it, like I said, we were gonna make it for Toe Jam, or a game jam called Toe Jam. But then we decided not to. I think it was for the better, because our premise for it was it wasn't as solid, right? Like, you can't really get more solid than Don't Shit Your Pants, because the game's in the title, right? I think we were gonna make like the entire floor covered in pants or something, right? So it's like an impossible. I don't know. I'm glad we didn't do it. But if we come up with something better than covering the floor with your garments, then we'll probably make it.
And complete dummy, somehow I didn't ask what you would want to do with Legend of Zelda, which is like the most important question I've ever asked anyone ever. What would you do with Legend of Zelda?
Oh, what would I do? I mean, well, one of the first things I would do is, like I said, make sure items didn't become redundant, right? And the newer Zelda games had a lot of lock and key type puzzles. So it's like, oh, the bow and arrow opens up eyes, right? And then you had the slingshot, and the slingshot knocks down objects, but it doesn't open eyes. And then you had the boomerang, and that triggered wind switches, but it didn't open up eyes. Like, it was all those stupid things that did the same thing, and I really didn't like that. So the first thing I do is probably revamp the entire way items are made, just because there's too much overlap. And like I said, make sure they don't become out of date. And that's a lot of the minutia, right? So it's like, I would, like, right off the bat, I'd probably give you 2 items near the very beginning of the game, and then the first dungeon you'd enter, you'd have to use both items so that people inherently understand that this game is going to require you to constantly reuse items. Stuff like that. But that was my main goal, was mainly, because that's a big portion of Zelda. It's the utility equipment and the dungeons. So that's more like level design.
Same with Metroid, I guess, but with 2D platforming involved. Would you ever want to do a Metroid game?
Yeah, we wanted... Rogue Legacy was originally going to be a Metroid.
Really?
And, yeah. Before we ran out of money, we switched it to a roguelike because it is cheaper, right? Because mainly it was art, because art is so expensive, and a roguelike kind of alleviates that. So originally our game was called Dark Souls 2D, and it was our take on the Metroid genre.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool. I can't talk too much about it because I think maybe down the road we'd like to tackle it, but that's only something we'd tackle if we had like 2 or 3 artists that were working with us. But yeah, it was going to be how we were going to tackle Metroid. Right now, I think we want to try to tackle multiplayer, which is going to be a big mistake, probably. I don't know.
Multiplayer, 2D multiplayer, 3D multiplayer?
2D. We don't know how to do 3D. 3D is out of our technical limitations, so we'll never do 3D again.
Fine with me. I prefer 2D overall anyway, so. Well, we're almost out of time, or I think we are out of time. Rats. If you write a 5-line poem about Rogue Legacy and send it to jonathan@destructoid.com, we have at least 1 code. Maybe more codes will happen. But you have a chance, people. You have to take a chance, just like you do in the game. See what happens. Maybe you've got the right DNA to win me over with a poem, and I'll send you a code that'll work on PS Vita, PS4, and PS3.
PS3, right, yeah.
Jonathan@destructoid.com. Easy to remember. Teddy, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Just say thanks to all my fans. Or thanks to all the fans of Rogue Legacy, not my fans. That was very egotistical of me. Just thanks for all the support that everybody's given for the game. We really appreciate it, and yeah, it's been huge. It's been pretty impressive, immense.
I'm happy to see that, and all the Pizza Palace fans.
Yeah,
Millions of them, probably. What?
Yeah. They're like 60 now, I think, but that's okay.
And people should talk about Rogue Legacy. I think it's one of those games that if more people knew about it, they would play it. Let's plays of it, just sharing videos about it, talking about why you think it's so great. If you're excited about this game, definitely let people know, because once you play it, you can't really go back. Like, I remember the first time I played it, I was a little like, I only have 5 minutes right now, and it was literally 2 hours later. I couldn't wait to see what my next kid was going to be and what my new problem was going to be and all those things. They can follow you on Twitter at Cellar Door Games. Is that right?
Yeah, at Cellar Door Games is our Twitter. And our Facebook, I don't know what that is, but we don't update it, so don't worry about that.
As for me, I'm at TronNots on Twitter. The show is on YouTube. You can watch it later. YouTube.com/SupHolmes. It's also on Libsyn and iTunes. You can listen to it. Hopefully I'll get the sound quality even better soon. I'm working on things all the time, but I didn't even get my headphones to work for the first 5 minutes of this episode, so shouldn't give promises I can't keep. Poor Teddy sitting there trying to talk to me.
That's my life. Yeah.
That's very kind of you. And yeah, tell your friends about the show as well if you think it's worthwhile. The more viewers and listeners we have, always the better. And I guess that's about it, unless I'm forgetting anything. I don't think so.
No, thanks.
Thank you. You like Earthbound? Got all these Earthbound guys.
Oh, yes, I love Earthbound.
Yeah, I've got all of them. You should make the new Earthbound in your spare time.
Somebody's already making an Earthbound game.
My bad.
I forget what it's called. It's like these indie guys. I feel bad because a friend's working on it.
Oh, yeah? It's not Lisa,
yeah.
is it? Lisa's a cool Earthbound game. Made an RPG Maker at first.
No. It was just kickstarted. It's like Citizens of Earth.
Oh, Citizens of Earth, Ryan Vandenberg.
Yeah.
We had him on the show not that long ago. He's a great guy. Wow.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah,
Oh.
the programmer on it is Andrew. Yeah, and I used to work with him at Drinkbox, so yeah.
You worked at Drinkbox and we didn't even talk about that? We have to have you on the show again, Teddy.
Okay. Drinkbox is kind of... Is the show over?
I think so. No, it's not. Now it is. Let's wave goodbye and we'll talk after the show. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.